Welcome to our new Landowner series. This is a series that we're doing to provide education to landowners, and whether you consider yourself fairly new or small or large, maybe you own 5 acres, 10 acres, or 1,000 acres. It doesn't matter. This is something that we feel like could give you some benefit. In this episode, we're talking about property taxes, and property taxes can get complex, and that's not our goal, is to get into the complexity of property taxes, but to give you the basics of understanding of how they work, and especially when we're talking about agricultural land or ag valuations. Today, we have Blake Bennett with us. He's an extension economist out of Dallas. And we also have Russ David. He's a land coordinator with the Taylor County Appraisal District, and we appreciate these guys being on with us today. And this is going to be a Q&A with the Taylor County Appraisal District. These property taxes, there's a property tax code that applies across the state, but then within each appraisal district or each county, they do a few different things, especially when it comes to agricultural valuations. So Blake, you want to start us off and talk a little bit about a general overview of what the 1D1 ag valuation process is like in Texas?
Oh, you bet, Steve. And I think you didn't talk fast enough. There's a lot of people that might have turned off whenever they heard Dallas. You might ought to mention I did grow up in Fisher County. I've still got family land over in Mitchell County. So I'm interested in what goes on out there quite a bit. And I can tell you I miss the stars at night more than anything in this world. Yeah, the property taxes is a big issue right now. You know, you're getting your notices in the mail, and I've spent most of my career addressing the issue of ag valuation or the ag exemption. Pretty complex in ways because it's different for every single county. But honestly, the information that comes down to the county's individual appraisal districts, it comes from the comptroller. The comptroller sends down a book that says, here's how you're going to handle it. It comes down to six factors. The appraisal district's only looking at the land. They're not looking at the improvements for ag use. The improvements are valued at market value. Principal use of the land has to be agriculture. Active agriculture has to be taking place. Those are pretty much yes or no questions. You have to file a timely application. And you have to be consistently in ag for 5 out of the last 7 years. The big one that catches most people is the degree of intensity. The degree of intensity of agriculture on your land has to be similar to what it is in the rest of the county. And so that's what really throws a lot of people, and that's where most of the questions come that I answer. I'm sure the ones that you answer. You know, what is the degree of intensity? What does it look like? It's a lot different in East Texas than it is in West Texas. We get a little bit more rain. In fact, it's raining right now. Here, we've got thunderstorms. I don't know what it's doing out there, but soil types are different. We've got different rainfall patterns and even within the same county. So that's where the big questions come up with the appraisal district.
Yeah, certainly. So, and we do get those questions. We field questions from time to time in our county extension offices regarding, hey, this landowner may have already been talking to the appraisal district, but they're trying to figure out a way around the system or to fit in the system. And of course, some of these can be kind of funny or they on the surface, but I had a question years ago, not necessarily in Taylor County, in another county that I worked in. A lady wanted to know how many free range chickens could she run, or a stocking rate per acre. Just last week, I heard of a story down in Coleman County where the question come up about kangaroos. How many kangaroos would it take, or what's the stocking rate on kangaroos? So these things can kind of get out there, but before we really do that, let's rein it in and let's bring Russell in with our Taylor County Appraisal District. He's the guy who is looking at this stuff here in Taylor County and helping drive what qualifies and what doesn't.
Yes, absolutely, Steve. Thanks for having me on. So qualifying for 1D1 appraisal, also known as the ag exemption, there's multiple ways to qualify, numerous ways. However, normally in Taylor County, we see 4. We see livestock, crops, bees, or wildlife management. Now, when we talk about intensity of use of those, livestock is, as a rule of thumb, one animal unit per 10 to 15 acres. Now, every application is based on its own merit, so depending on the topography of the land, it may be more, maybe a little less, but in general, that's what we see in Taylor County. Your crops, you definitely want to have over 51% of any property qualified with crops. Bees are a little interesting. Um, bees are a little more complex. So minimum acreage for ag in Taylor County is 5 acres. However, bees are capped out at 20 acres. And there's an intensity of use for number of hives between 5 to 12 active hives, depending on where you sit in that range of 5 to 20 acres. Then there's wildlife management. Wildlife management is, I think it's a really helpful way to qualify for 1D1. There's 7 different items, and you need to do 3 of the 7 items to qualify for wildlife. Now, most people, if you have an acreage that's over 5 acres, you're doing these things already. They are habitat control, erosion control, predator control, supplemental food or water, providing some kind of shelter, maybe bat boxes or bird houses, or making sure you have some low brush for small animals, providing shelters. And 7th is census taking. So even a game camera out there taking a look at what kind of deer you have wandering on your property. Now, if you're doing 3 of those 7 things, you could qualify for wildlife. We also recommend getting a conservation report on the property from the USDA. That helps us out, helps the customer fill out the ag form for qualification.
Yeah, Russ. Um, let's say I'm a landowner in Taylor County. All I've got to have is 5 acres, correct? As long as 5 acres or more is what you're saying. And if I want to apply for say a wildlife valuation, I'm not interested in livestock or bees or anything like that, but I want to do wildlife. I can get with the Natural Resource Conservation Service here in town. The folks over there are great to help, and they can help me write a conservation plan and help me make my application to you guys.
Actually, you just bring the conservation program in here to the office, and we'll sit down with you. We'll help work through the intricacies of our government form.
Okay.
So is it a hard and fast 5 acres is absolutely the minimum? I mean, or do you
No,
look
that's
at
more of a general rule.
every single situation you look at individually?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, there's a lot of odd different ways to qualify when you're talking about kangaroos or chickens and all these different things. I've heard some interesting stories in the past on how people have qualified their smaller acreages, but we take each application on its own merit. So we do study it and make sure, can this qualify? Does this fit within the property tax code? So just because you have 2 acres, that could qualify, come in, talk with us. We'll sit down, evaluate it, and it's possible you could be awarded the 1D1 appraisal.
Funny story. Right after I moved to the Dallas area, I was talking with one of the appraisers in the Metroplex, and I just asked him, "What's the smallest acreage you've ever certified for ag?" And he proudly said 1/4 acre. And I said, 1/4 acre? I mean, that what were they growing? And he said, irises. And I said, okay, what do you know about growing irises? He said, nothing. But I went out and they already had them all sold to flower shops. And it looked like a lot more work than I ever wanted to do in my whole life. So I said, you know what? You've got everything in place. You got it.
Yeah, floral production. Like I said, there's many different ways to qualify. Floral production is just another one of them.
Yep. Yep. I guess that if you're trying to grow something that typically would not grow in the Abilene area, though, you're going to say, well, come on, you got to be practical about it.
Well, and there has to be a market for it, right? If you're growing something in mass, but there's no market, then there's no production. You have to be able to take your product to market for it to qualify.
Okay. Okay. But you don't have to produce a product that can be sold. Like I can get my ag use based on producing hay that I'm gonna feed to my own cattle, right?
Oh, yes, sir. For
Okay.
sure.
I guess I'll be selling my hay through my cattle, but
Right. I mean,
yeah,
it's just another step in the production cycle of your cattle. So
yeah.
it's being used in conjunction with your cattle for sure.
Okay. What about leasing property out? You gonna allow me to, if I've got property out in West Texas, obviously I'm an absentee landowner. Obviously, I have somebody that leases it out. That's not a problem, is it?
No, sir. As long as your lessee maintains the qualifications of ag intensive use, for example, then yeah, that's something that's your right to do as a property owner.
Mhm. That's a big question that comes up a lot with me is can I lease it out and still
Sure.
get ag use? And yeah, that's not a problem. At least I hope so. That's what I'm doing.
No, that's good.
So Russ, how long, so say I applied for a 1D1 qualification. Maybe it's an ag, maybe it's wildlife. How long do this program last? Do I have to
Okay.
reapply ever so often? Do I have to, or is it good as long as I own the property, or how does that work?
Depending on how you're qualifying. So, um, qualifying for the 1D1 appraisal does not require a reapplication every year. However, wildlife management, we do send out, it's called an annual report, but we send it out every 5 years to people after they've qualified. And it's just to kind of re-up, let us know how you're using that property to maintain your wildlife management. Now, when it comes to other qualification, livestock, crops, there is no need to reapply unless there's some sort of deed change, or if you get one in the mail. I like to tell folks, if I send you a new application in the mail, there's a reason for it. Please fill it out and send it back.
What time of year do you normally mail those out?
For new property owners, it's near the beginning of the year. We mail them out somewhere middle of January to the middle of February. And that's important because that goes back to the timely filing that Blake talked about earlier. Timely filing is between January and April 30th. So we want to meet those deadlines. Now, the chief appraiser has the opportunity to extend that timely filing period by 30 or 60 days, but that's determined every year. So we keep the deadline at April 30th.
So if I buy a new piece of ground and I close, let's say in February, I need to make sure and get that application in before April the 30th.
Well, April 30th of the next year. Since the property was in ag as of January 1st, if it had ag, I'm assuming, you bought a property with the 1D1 appraisal on it in April, then April of the next year is when you'll be getting your letter to apply because it's already been qualified as of January 1st. That's our appraisal date.
Okay. So if I close on December the 31st, I need to make sure and apply that very next April.
Yes, sir.
All right, there you go. You know, y'all send out letters to people other than just those that just bought land too. I got one of your magic letters in Mitchell County this past year saying that we need to talk because they didn't see any cattle out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I called the appraisal district and I let them know we've got a leasee. The leasee is rotating the cattle. They said, not a problem. Just have that leasee come in, fill out an affidavit that, yes, I'm rotating the cattle and there's not an issue whatsoever. Now, I wanted them to send me a letter saying there's not an issue after
Right.
it's all done, just to make sure all is on the up and up. But I think that goes to communication with the appraisal district is key. Y'all need to know. Just keep you informed.
Absolutely. The better informed I am, the more I have the opportunity to make an accurate appraisal on the property. So yeah, staying in communication with property owners is key. And it's actually one of the favorite parts of my job.
Mm-hmm. Who do you answer to? Who's
I
your big boss?
The CEO or chief appraiser is Gary Ernst here in Taylor County, and
Who's his boss? Let all
after
the way
that we have our board of directors,
so it goes all
the
the way up.
appraisal district board of directors.
Goes all the way up the chain to what, the comptroller? Comptroller's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the comptroller's office, they're the ones that make sure that our numbers are correct. They do studies on us every 2 years to make sure that our uh, ag productive values are as they should be, based on they're called farm and ranch surveys. They go out to folks like Steve and few landowners in the county and myself. We'll fill those out, send those into the state, and that helps the state determine what they believe is the expenses and the values, the ag productive values that we should be seeing in the county.
So do you have to be exactly match what their numbers are?
No, it's not an exact match. Um, we it's 95 to 105% technically. We just had a study done, our farm and ranch study done, and we were at 98%, which is where we like to be. So that's saying that we're not 100% of the value that the states say we should, but we're at 98. We're passing, but we're a little benefit to the customer.
Okay. So what if you were at 90%, meaning you had severely undervalued the property in the county? What happens?
That that can have a lot of drastic effects. If I don't have my land values correct, then the market value for improved properties probably aren't going to be correct either. When we take that into consideration, then we could fail the ratio study. And the impacts of that, if we continue to fail the ratio study, we don't get within that 95 to 105%. The long and short of it, the entities lose money. School districts won't get the money from property taxes.
Ouch. So we need you to be dead on. We need you to be exactly right.
It's 98%, sir.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. What happens if I'm farming, say, some land and then I do stop? I just sell off all my cattle, completely get rid of all of them, and I'm retired. What happens with my ag use?
Well, the first thing we're going to consider is the rule in the property tax code that says it must be used for ag for the past 5 of 7 years. Now, with drought and things like that, I have had people come in and tell me that they're not running cattle on their land right now because there's no water. That's understandable as long as we still meet that 5 of 7 year requirement. So eventually, there's going to have to be some more production on it, or we will be forced to remove the 1D1 appraisal.
And is there consequences if you remove that 1D1 appraisal?
The tax liability of the property owner becomes exorbitantly higher. Usually in Taylor County, I've seen about an 85 to 93% decrease in taxable value between market value and 1D1 appraisal values or productive values.
So my value that's used to calculate my property tax is going to go up by about 80 to 85%. And I'm going to pay a little penalty, aren't I? Pay a rollback tax.
Well, it depends what the use is, but yes, there is definitely a potential for rollback taxes. Rollback taxes are the taxes that the difference in taxes between market value and productive value for the previous 3 years. So that's also a large impact on the taxpayer as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of landowners. Whenever I get to that part where I'm talking about rollback taxes, they say, well, that's just not right. Why is that so? And I say, because it's in the property tax code. So
And that's exactly right.
You don't have any choice. You got to follow the code.
I will say this: our legislators have been working to to minimize the effect of rollback taxes. There used to be a cap rate, a percentage on those lost value and the taxes, and it used to go out for 5 years. So they're slowly cutting that back. I don't know if it's going to get any leaner than 3 years, but we can always cross our fingers.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So, and speaking of rollback taxes, and we're seeing this in Taylor County, where agricultural land is being sold and then developed into maybe, with residential subdivision, if you will. In those situations, Russ, that's where they would pay the rollback taxes. Who's responsible for those? The developer usually pay those, or how does that work?
It really depends on the developer, but what I've seen the most in Taylor County is it's passed on to the new property owner. It's included with the taxes for the new property. However, it is split out to whatever that smaller acreage, that residential lot is, the its portion of the rollback tax.
Gotcha.
So what happens, the way the process is real quick, is I get the lot that's to be developed, and it's broken down into all the new property IDs and the sizes, and I actually figure out a rollback tax for each individual lot. That way, as the developer sells them off, that tax is being kept up with.
That's a nice way of doing it. That's a lot of work on your end. That's a lot of work on your end.
It really is, but in Taylor County, we work really hard. We pride ourselves on our customer service, and it's little things like that where we take a little extra labor, but it's appreciated. And I mean, another great example of that is in Taylor County, we have 14 different land types. The property tax code really only requires, I'd say, about 4, maybe 5. Those different soil types are based on a topographical survey, and that helps us be much more accurate when it comes down to how much value you can produce. So those ag productive values are based on different soil types throughout the county. We have pasture land, tillable land, and 7 different qualities of each, and they each hold their own value per acre.
Wow.
So again, a little more labor, but it's useful in accuracy.
And Russ, that helps if I'm a farmer out and let's say Western Taylor County. I'm out on the county line west of Trent, for example.
Sure.
And I get my appraisal notice in the mail, and I'm upset about it because I think it's higher than what it should be. And I accuse the appraisal district of, well, you're lumping my farm in with the productivity value of maybe the farms down in the Jim Ned Valley around Tuscola that are more productive. For example. And that way you can say, well, we're breaking it down 7 different categories on productivity, 1 being the most productive land and 7 being the least productive, where some other counties may only have 3 or 4, right? Categories, or is 4 maybe the minimum that they have to use?
Yeah, I was reviewing the property tax code, and I believe it said there's 4, with a 5th one being wasteland. But I feel that here in Taylor County, our way of appraising these properties is much more accurate, and I think a lot of the customers I've explained that to over the past couple of years really understood it and appreciated that.
It's good. So Taylor County's going above and beyond the tax code and being able to put values on these properties. And you also have a group of property owners here in the county that are involved in agriculture. That's their daily business, that are on a board, or a committee, an agriculture committee that meets fairly regular there at the appraisal district, that you bounce these things off of, and they kind of agree to them too, correct?
Yes, sir. As I said, there's some of the folks that receive that farm and ranch survey, and that's, when we meet, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about productivity values. We're talking about the expenses to each type of productivity value. So the expenses on tillable land is much different than the expenses on pasture land. So, and all these things come together in a 5-year average to determine the ag productive values. So we evaluate market lease data and expenses over a 5-year average to get those productive values. And the Ag Advisory Board is key in doing that.
So if I own 5 acres and I got bees, what productivity value do you place on that land? How do you determine that?
Well, that's a different way of qualifying for the same type of appraisal. So it would have the same value as the pasture land or the tillable land that those bees are on.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense.
And if I've got 30 acres and I want to get into bees, you mentioned earlier that I can only claim up to 20 acres of that, correct?
That's correct, sir.
So the other 10 acres I would need to, if I wanted a 1D1 classification on it, I would need to have something else going on that other 10 acres.
Alfalfa
Or a combination
would be a great idea. Plant some alfalfa out there and those bees will help you pollinate.
There you go.
Hey, look, there you go. We ought to send him with all that. We ought to send everybody over to him with the ideas on what can I do with my land.
Yeah.
We're just going to give him your phone number if that's okay, Russ.
Well, I appreciate talking to every customer. So yeah, that's fine with me.
So as we kind of wrap up today and recap what we're talking about, and folks watching, if you're watching and you're still confused, basically we're talking about property taxes and how it's valuated across the state, but here in Taylor County. And there's full market value. Then there's also what we call agricultural valuation or wildlife valuation. And that's based on productivity. And what we're talking here with Russ David at the Appraisal District, he's saying, 5 acres usually about the general minimum here in Taylor County that you could possibly get a qualification or evaluation on, and then up to there's really no maximum on the amount of acreage. But there are bees, which that have a cap of 20 acres, but then any other agricultural practices based on its own merit could qualify you to get your property taxes on this 1D1 valuation system. If you don't have it currently and you want to get an ag valuation, you need to contact Russ David there at the Appraisal District. Is that correct, Russ? You'd be the guy that they would contact?
Absolutely. And there's also my associate, Joni. She works in the office here with me. And I'd like to add that, legislation is always, could always change. So these are just basic rules right now. But if you're curious about in the future, definitely give me a call. My phone number is 325-437-7941. I'd be happy to talk with anyone about how to qualify for the 1D1 appraisal.
And that's a direct line to your office.
To my desk, yes, sir.
Good, wow. Good. And if you don't remember that, call the Taylor County Appraisal District and just ask for Russ David or
absolutely
Joni Solis.
Exactly.
Outside of that, appreciate you guys being on today. That I think is a really good discussion on maybe bringing to light what the 1D1 classification part of ag or valuation on property taxes is and how it works here in Taylor County. If you're outside of Taylor County, you might contact your local appraisal district because every county is a little bit different, especially when it comes to the acreage or the intensity or what they would consider qualifying for that. Outside of that, you guys have anything you want to add before we get off today?
Steve, I think that every time that I talk to any landowners, I say communication with the appraisal district is the most important thing that you can do on your land. Aside from producing something, communicating with them openly, just trying to help them get it right, because they're held accountable. If they can't defend the value they put on your land, then they're gonna get dinged. So communication, open communication, show them you're trying to get it right, show them you're trying to do it the right way, and you're not going to have any problems, or you shouldn't have any problems.
I think
And
you're certainly right.
We'll help to make sure they're doing it the right way. We're here to offer solutions and options. You know, we definitely want to help new customers with this process, and I look forward to meeting some new people.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for being on. I think this is very beneficial. If you're watching this, thanks for watching. We hope you gain some knowledge out of this. If you have any questions, you can contact Russ David there at the Taylor County Appraisal District, or you can contact us here at the Taylor County Extension Office as well. Thanks for that, and we hope to see you on some other of our new landowner series.